BYU, my alma mater and birthplace of unicorns.
In business, a unicorn is a private company worth $1 billion or more.
Nationally, BYU is a top 10 unicorn producing school and top 3 in entrepreneurship.
You could call it a unicorn university.
Yeah, it's like a business incubator where unicorn CEOs and stock market stars are born. Hey there. BYU, home to big ideas and unicorns.
Go Cougars!
Go Cougars! Yeah, okay.
Welcome into the Pac-12 Panic Room, plus BYU, plus USU, plus Weber. Mitch, you're wearing the BYU shirt, so I gotta ask you about this commercial. John Heater, the Napoleon Dynamite himself, in a commercial about unicorns.
Yeah, I had to wear the polo today first off, JP, because all the Ute fans on Twitter saying I'm a Zoop, so I'm embracing the Zoop.
Home of the Zoops.
And I am, I guess I'm a Zoop. So, but yeah, that commercial, I saw that first thing during the broadcast of that BYU-Arizona game last week, and just thinking to myself, okay, BYU, we get it, you're weird, you're nuts, I get it, it makes sense, but a unicorn, like I was literally looking it up on Google to think or to search if in fact they were the unicorn university, looking up research or something, because I can imagine this is the place that produced Studio C. I mean, it's not out of reach to think that the nerdification at BYU continues to grow and unicorns might be being studied as they try to become a research institution to possibly one day get into the Pac-12. But who knows? It was terrible. BYU should just pull it and just do some highlight video of that BYU-Arizona game. That would be the best pitch for potential students.
Are unicorns in the Big 12? Is that what they were going?
Maybe that's the ticket they need to get into the Power 5, to show that they're expanding their research. They're looking into unicorns. They're going to tell Student Ally, our ally, we're going to look for anything and everything to make you guys happy. And we're even embracing unicorns. We're now embracing everything at BYU.
Late kickoff for BYU against Cal, so I expect to see it late at night as well again this week. Looking at that game, I saw BYU beat Arizona, and they looked like a Big Ten team, keeping up with the Power 5. They dominated on the offensive line. They were tremendous running the football. They look so physical. What do you expect against Cal?
First off, JP, we talked last week off the air and off camera, and I just thought to myself, and I think you agreed, was BYU doesn't have a chance.
No.
They did keep it close, but really the Arizona was going to pull away. That was a huge win for BYU, because I thought that it just kind of gave that erased the doubt from last year, because I think myself, everyone around BYU's fan base, the coaches, well, not the coaches, but players too, I just think there was some doubt that can they actually do it? Can they actually beat Power 5 teams? And they did it. And, Arizona, whether they go 3 wins, 2 wins, or 8 or 9 wins, still a good win for BYU at this time, at this place for the program. Huge win. And like I said, they were a physical football team. When you're expecting the run, they still had success, which was something I don't think I've ever seen from a BYU team.
Squally Canada was phenomenal, going for nearly 100 yards in the first game of the year. And Hodge and Hoyt, as it was described by Greg Hansen of the Arizona Daily Star, that was the corner for BYU and their success. 600 pounds of muscle moving that Arizona defensive line. They look listless, but BYU really, really impressive to see. I think this game going up against another Power 5 opponent, against another Pac-12 team, huge game for them to continue the momentum, continue it into play at home at LaVell Edwards Stadium.
Yeah, they look a lot like your guy, Kyle Gunther. They just like
they
the
did.
embodiment of an offensive lineman. Big. They've ate a lot of PB&J sandwiches. No, but really that is going to be the strength of BYU this year, is relying on that offensive line and winning games. Doing that against a Pac-12 team, I thought that was huge for BYU. And I think that, BYU maybe knocked down some perceptions of maybe their lack of talent. I thought there was. I still think that their second and third strings are some question marks, because after the 5 starting offensive linemen, they're going to be turning to a defensive lineman as their 6th guy, who was a defensive lineman 2 weeks ago in camp, and now he's going to be playing offensive line now. So it is a bit thin, but they're starting 22, barring injury, pretty good at BYU, and if it gives them a chance against this Cal team to possibly get another win on their home field. And before the season, ESPN FPI gave BYU a 4% chance of going 2-0. So I know the FPI gets scrutinized a lot by BYU, Utah, and Pac-12 fans, but that's still kind of defying the odds and really surprising a lot of folks. And if you win that game, you get more votes in the top 25 poll, possibly. So BYU could possibly be in that national conversation if they get this win.
Get you on the record for this. Big game, not a big game for BYU Cal.
I think it's a big game.
Yeah.
I think it's big for both because for Cal, they got to get to a bowl game. Last year they didn't get to it in Justin Wilcox's first year. That's fine. Debut season, a program that's had their ups and downs. But this year you got to get to a bowl game. Last year they started out 3-0, then finished 2-7 in conference. They got to win this BYU game because I don't think you can expect more than 2 or 3 wins in conference, just how tough the Pac-12 North is. So this is a big game for Cal, and it's obviously huge for BYU as well.
And that is the biggest game, at least for me, involving local schools because Utah taking on Northern Illinois. Sure, it's a road game and they need to win it, but I think they take care of business against a team that really looked inept offensively against Iowa.
And I think you hit it right there. Inept offense, and I think that's the big issue, especially against Utah. They're going to keep these guys, in check. You see the yards that they gave up last week against Weber. Yes, I know, FCS team, but a top 10 FCS team and someone that was very competitive against James Madison, who's won games against FBS teams. So Utah's going to really control the line of scrimmage against Northern Illinois, and I don't think Northern Illinois is going to have really any sort of pop offensively to counter Utah, especially the Utah secondary, too. They're going to cover them, and I think Utah, offensively, I'm very interested to see what they do in this game. Sutton Smith, that defensive end, wants a running back, oddly enough, at Northern Illinois. I think that's going to be an interesting storyline to see how Utah's offense does, but I'm with you. I think Utah rolls. I think they cover this line and then some. I think this could be a 3-touchdown game.
Exactly. I think that the fact that NIU really couldn't get anything going when they had a punt block on the first drive of the game against the Hawkeyes and they couldn't get anything going offensively spells doom for them against Utah. Continuing with the local games, USU against New Mexico State. New Mexico State looks terrible. Not a big game for me, but a big one if you're looking for Matt Wells and continuing the spectrum of going forward. Logan. Continuing the spectrum of going forward and building off of that impressive performance against Michigan State.
You know what, JP? I'm going to say big game.
Really?
Revenge game.
Okay.
Utah State last year lost in a last-second game at the Arizona Bowl, the Nova home loan Arizona Bowl. So revenge is on the mind. Maybe that story gets a little bit played up, but I think it's big for them. And I think that, Utah State has always been that team that gives some Power 5 quality top 25 team a real scare. Then they have some head-scratching performances. I don't think New Mexico State is great. You mentioned. They're terrible. They're already on their third game, and there's really no sign of life already from that newly independent squad. But I think Utah State wins. But I think it's a big game for them because they're trying to get revenge from a team that returns a lot of guys from a squad that won a bowl game a year ago.
Games on Facebook. Edge for me, not a big game.
That's a great point when you mentioned it that way. We had Brett McMurphy on earlier this week on the Bill Riley Show, and he even mentioned that the Utah State game was going to be on Stadium via Facebook, and I thought to myself, man, that's got to suck.
Yeah.
That's got to be terrible, watching a game on Facebook. Well, I hate logging into Facebook as it is.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't want to watch a game on it.
I don't need to see the comment section. I don't need to see memes that are unchecked.
The tear emojis flying through.
Yeah. I'm not about that noise as we go forward. But looking at a huge game, Pac-12 wise, and looking at the Panic Room, which we focus on the Pac-12, top 25 matchup, Stanford against USC. This one on the farm, huge game for the conference. Huge game might determine the balance in the South, looking from Utah's perspective.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And also, too, last week there was a lot of conversation about representing the Pac-12 was Washington against Auburn. Part of me thinks that this is more of a perception game for the Pac-12 because I still think nationally USC is always perceived to be the best team. In this region, we all know Washington's the best team, but nationally, USC is the one that everyone looks at as a playoff contender. And if you lose this game, you're USC, then I think the perception takes a bigger hit for this conference. So, yeah, it's a big game. But KJ Costello and JJ Arcega-Whiteside were fantastic last week against San Diego State. I mean, Arcega-Whiteside looked like more of the Heisman contender than Bryce Love, who ended up with 14 yards. Still questions about, the youth of USC, but you already saw some of the great connection that's been established for years. JT Daniels and
Amon-Ra.
Yeah, Amon-Ra. Those guys have been playing ball for a long time. They already know where to go. They know the timing between the two. So I think that is going to be something that's going to be fun to watch as the years go by. But for this week, I think Stanford's going to win. In the preseason, I thought Stanford was going to lose this game, but USC kind of left more doubt. It's going to take more time. I underestimated that youth movement. It takes time wherever you are, and I think Stanford being at home, I think they get this win. It seems like every year too. This is an early matchup.
Huge game.
And Stanford always seems to come out on top in recent memory, so should be a good one.
It's a great rivalry in the Pac-12, just in terms of it's always on the line. Yeah. The Pac-12 championships, these are early games. Sure, they are early, but this really sets the course forward for both these teams. One of my favorite memories from Stanford USC, Andrew Luck getting a tackle on a huge play, and while it was a turnover, it reinvigorated that Stanford Cardinals side with Jim Harbaugh coaching them. That's exactly what he wants to see. He wants to see you show your bones are strong, that you're drinking milk. And Stanford was able to prove it on that play with Andrew Luck. This is always going to be a good game when it comes to the Pac-12.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think, too, go back to that one year, was it 2008, 43-point underdog and Stanford gets it done. I mean, that's ever since then, when Jim Harbaugh changed the culture from the likes of Buddy Tevens and who was it, Tyrone Willingham.
Yep, Ty Willingham.
Stanford's then become a next-level program. I think it all goes back to that game in the Coliseum where they were a huge underdog, and ever since Stanford's been a force to reckon with nationally.
Other game in the Pac-12 that I think you'll pay attention to as a Utah fan, number 9, Washington against North Dakota. Now, the result not in doubt, but looking at the way that Washington had come off their big game last week against Auburn and the perception of the Pac-12, sure, they stuck with it till the end, but softy, Jake Browning, not able to win the big game.
Yeah, he can't win that. He can't win that big game, and the collapses in the red zone last week for Washington were just disastrous. It was notable that they fought back because I really thought, Auburn was just going to just run through Washington early on in the game, but still, Washington just couldn't break through, get that big win. Granted, it was basically a road game. It was 90-10 Auburn, according to reports, but I think that, this game, it's in the bag for Washington, but it sets up a huge game next week. Both teams likely going to be in the national rankings still. It's a huge game, and I think that Ute fans should definitely tune in if you got the Pac-12 network. Bad slate of games on the Pac-12
I know.
tomorrow. It's rough. I feel for Mike Yam, the Yammers, Yogi. It's a tough sled. It's week 2 for the Pac-12 network people, which are great friends of this program and the station, but it's going to set up a huge game next week with Washington and Utah. I can't wait to see that one.
There's a reason why they're on the farm this week, even though it's not on their network, because that's the big game in the conference. You're not going to go to Oregon to watch them play Portland State or Oregon State where they're playing SUU, if you want to get a little contention in the Panic Room, plus BYU, plus USU, plus Weber. They're not in the Pac-12, right. So let's consider that.
That's the power of the poll.
That is so much power in this poll. Considering the last game in this pick 6 of big game, not a big game, we touched on the top because they played BYU, Arizona against Houston, and the possible number 1 overall pick, Ed Oliver.
Yeah, I like this game a lot, and it's going to be something I think Arizona, they got to win this game. This is a must, and that's what makes it a big game, JP. Arizona is in an interesting situation because people in that Arizona fan base feels like they're already not giving up on someone, but they're just disappointed. That's what happens. I talked about it last week. When you play a BYU, it's not like
fire everybody.
That's how it always comes out to be because you're just perceived to have more talent, better players, better athletes. Then you lose and get physically dominated. It raises a lot of questions about how they use someone, what type of offense and defense they have. So this is a big game. You got to let Khalil Tate run. Let the guy run. You can't let that guy not run. I almost felt at times Tate was disinterested and upset last week. He's just sitting at the end of a bench, just talking to himself. It looked like I thought how they used Tate was just shocking because when the few times that he did run against BYU, he was having success. He could run at will on BYU. And with Houston, great defensive line, like I said, with Ed Oliver. Really interested to see how this one plays out. Houston's been kind of a team. They struggled with Rice.
Exactly.
In week 1. Arizona should win this game. If they don't, that's really concerning going forward. And I almost feel like that rules them out, potentially, of being a Pac-12 South, at least a serious contender in this league. So it's a huge game for Arizona.
I was amazed by the play calling that they were doing in that game. 11 throws of 38 yards or more. That stat from Michael Lev. And goodness me, the home run ball that they were going for on first down, On third down, they were going for home run balls. It was really astonishing the way that Arizona was managing the game and not getting those read option plays, those RPOs for Khalil Tate to go out and run because he's the running back playing quarterback. Everybody knows that. But they were trying to make him into a pocket passer in his first game of the 2018 season. And that's not going to work.
Yeah, it's just not going to work. And they have great wide receivers too. I mean, not great, but I'd say really good. Poindexter's really good play.
They got past BYU for pass interference calls that didn't end up burning BYU in the end, but they still got past those cornerbacks and DBs, and they were getting open.
Yeah, Houston's going to be an interesting test for them because they got, I would say, maybe better athletes in skill positions than BYU. So I think that's where you get some concerns, and it's on the road, the notorious 10 a.m. or 9 a.m. Pacific time kick. That's always talked about in this conference. When you go a different time zone and have an early game, always makes me think of the Stanford Northwestern game a couple years back when they lost. That's like the staple, the 2015 Stanford Northwestern game. But tough test for Arizona. If they come out of this one with a loss, I just think they're out of viewing them as a legit contender in this conference.
And viewing Khalil Tate as a legit Heisman Trophy candidate, which we all thought going into the season. That does it for our Pick 6 and our big game, not a big game segment here on the Pac-12 Panic Room. We'll hit you up with more analysis next week. Make sure you like and subscribe. Find us on the website at ESPN700sports.com. For Mitch, I'm JP. Till next time, bye for now.